Hope you're all doing all right, hanging in there on day one. So here we have Jessica Lindsey and Christy Banks, the Spatial Forces duo, and they're going to talk to you today. I know they have a really nice presentation for you all, so I will just hand it right over. Greetings, how are you?
We're doing well. We're doing well. Really happy to be here. We just turned in our stuff for our concert tomorrow.
It's in the can.
Yeah, we're really excited for y'all to hear Abby's piece. I see Abby. And so many other wonderful pieces, including a couple of ours that were kind of standards for us. So, yeah, we're looking forward to that opportunity and the talk back afterwards, which that's maybe my favorite part of concerts.
I like back talk.
I like drinks, but
that's also my favorite part of concerts.
Hydrating. It's good to stay hydrated.
Hydrate or dehydrate. All right.
So we've got a presentation that we thought we would share with y'all, just with some fun stuff and some ideas that we thought would help you if you want to write for us or if you want to write for other folks who used fixed media. So that's kind of what we focused on today, but I think you'll find it useful for all sorts of music writing. Okay, so I'm going to do what I always do when I'm doing this share screen thing. I just talk out loud while I do it. I'm going to share my sound and optimize for video clip. There we go. This is me being a teacher. Oh, that probably didn't work. And let's see, we got this going. Cancel it. So, yeah. I'm wondering if y'all can see our screen. Can someone just give us a little shout out that you got it? A thumbs up.
You got it.
You're good.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Affirmation's important.
Yeah, we need that.
We need
that. So yeah, we just I'm Jessica. This is Christy, and we wanted to give you a fun intro to us. So these are not all the pictures that we have that are this ridiculous, but this is many of them, including putting it right in the center, our awesome evening the other night at the Stargazer Fest, which was an amazing, amazing thing. So congratulations, Elizabeth. Woo!
That was fun.
It was really fun. So I was thinking we might kind of start up here and...
Oh yeah, we have the same teacher. She's the one in the front of that photo. And I think that's an important thing about us in that we sound like ourselves, but we also have a very similar tone concept of the clarinet and the bass clarinet sounds. And so what that allows us to do, I think, is really mess with the audience as far as who's playing what. And sometimes our sounds are so close that when we listen back to a recording from like 3 years ago, I'm not really sure which part I played and which part was Jessica. So that's an important part of our sound.
Yeah. As the Spatial Forces duo, we aim to make you wonder which side of the room the sound is coming from. So we have the same teacher, as Christy said, and we met in Nebraska. At the University of Nebraska, and so sometimes we like to wear our Husker pride. I mean, why not? And also we were part of the same new music group ensemble called the New Music Agency, and we really enjoyed playing with that group, the larger group, in different configurations and a little overlapping and at different times. But I don't know if y'all have noticed, it is a lot harder to get more than 2 people together to do different things. And so with the name New Music Agency, we decided that we would be
spatial agents. Well, special agents.
Yeah.
Which became spatial agents. So we're Spatial Forces because we went on a tour that we called the Code Read Tour.
Yeah, it happened. It happened. Um, so this is a fun pictures. We have many generations of professional pictures of our ensemble. That's one of them. And so that's a fun thing to share with you. And as we kind of move across here, we just have had, we've really, I guess, when Christy and I met, we were both living in Nebraska, and then Christy got a wonderful job in Pennsylvania, and I was just so devastated that her and her family were moving because I was really close with all of them. And I kind of started to realize that that actually gave us more capital, that we were in different spaces, and since about 2005, Christy has been in Pennsylvania. I moved from Nebraska to Colorado, briefly to Alaska, and then here in North Carolina. And so I teach also at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. And so we've done a lot of different things, like go to conferences and try to lift up giant reeds. And a lot of those things have just been helpful, that we come from these different spaces and can converge.
And gonna kind of tie it in later in our talk, in that what we do is show up someplace like where we're holding that ginormous reed, and we don't have very much rehearsal time, and then we play together, living sometimes in very different time zones, like when she was in Alaska. So part of what we're going to talk about today is how do we organize ourselves, and how can composers organize their music and their materials for us so that we can maximize the short rehearsal time that we have. So that's an example of us landing and rehearsing really fast and getting on stage.
Absolutely, exactly. This is just one of our many ridiculous pictures, just a fun outtake.
It's my favorite picture of myself. Literally, I always want to use that one.
Yeah, and I always have to say, no, we can't use that for the poster, Christy.
I see why not.
So speaking of posters, I just wanted to share with you a couple of our really fun, exciting concerts that we've done over the years, back when it was easy to travel. This was a poster from a concert in Alaska, and I guess I kind of skipped around a little bit. From Alaska, we did a concert in Shanghai, China, and then a couple years after that, we were able to head out to New Zealand, and we're excited to start exploring the world again as a duo.
And then we went over
That's
here
true.
during the World Cup. We were in Belgium, playing in Belgium when Belgium made it to the quarterfinals. Then they lost. But anyway, so we joined a conga line in Belgium.
I mean, what else would you do?
When in Belgium.
And so this is just another wonderful, ridiculous picture. I was driving one day here in North Carolina, and I noticed that there was a reed gold mine. Like, there's a gold mine full of reeds, and I was definitely photo op. So we have our kind of Sistine Chapel moment heading towards the reed gold mine. And so down here, this is just a sampling of the wonderful composers that we've worked with over time. That we recently recorded an album 2 months ago now. Timey-wimey. And all of these composers are featured on the album, almost all of them. And I guess one thing I thought was kind of interesting about our group, I don't know if you feel this way, Christy, but especially Ricky here, and Rusty, Christy's husband, those two composers have really shaped a lot of our output and kind of defined us, or helped us define ourselves. So I wanted to put some pictures there. We always enjoy, making friends. And this is Sheila Silver, a wonderful Pulitzer Prize winning composer, and a really great friend of mine, John Drumheller. And then I guess we'll close it out with this.
It's for our album.
That's for our album. We're not sure if it's gonna make it into the cover, but it just kind of seems like what we do a lot. We haul a lot of gear, and this is composer and roadie, Lindsey Banks, helping us get set up for our photo shoot. So I'm just gonna pause our share because I like seeing faces
Hey,
of
faces.
people. And so throughout, I don't know if y'all want to pop on and just have like a quick thoughts or Q&A or anything that we just, like when you ask for questions at the end, sometimes it's like really overwhelming to remember what the heck these people were babbling about. So any thoughts or questions or be happy.
I have a question for you then. How many of you are performers as well as wanting to be composers? Do we have composer performers? Excellent. Those of you who are composer performers, are you interested in playing other people's work also, or just kind of realizing your work? Thumbs up, other people's works too. Good. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right.
Very
Good.
cool.
Right.
Julianne, yeah, we'd love to take your question.
Yeah. I think
Oh,
she's.
sorry, I was just agreeing with what you were saying. That's all.
Very
That's
cool.
great. Rock on.
Chase, did you have a question? I saw you move your microphone and I wasn't sure. Oh,
I
okay.
think he's just making
All
room
right.
for his soda. Okay. All right.
We're just cold calling. Okay. Awesome. Oh, okay.
I only
cool.
perform other people's music.
Oh.
Oh, that's sweet. Okay.
Okay. Oh, and
Yeah.
cool. Thanks, Kira. Yeah, this is great. Oh, thanks, y'all.
Yeah.
Nice.
Great.
All right, we'll pop back to our PowerPoint, and since we can't see you in the setup of Zoom, just
Unmute and interrupt us if anything, if the mood strikes you.
Should we give them a unmute and howl at the moon?
Yes, you can totally howl at the moon.
then we'll know that it wasn't just an accidental unmute.
Right.
Oh, now I can see y'all a little bit.
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
Yay,
look at that.
fabulous.
Look at that.
All right.
All right, so we're just going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we find as we're playing pieces by others. And as you'll see on our concert tomorrow night, I recently started doing some composing. And I think the shout out that I want to give to y'all as composers is that I really thought the hardest thing was going to be like coming up with an idea and then getting it on paper and then, getting that idea to sound good and all that good stuff. But I really felt like that really the biggest barrier for me, even though I work with Christy all the time, was just getting the notation down to a place where it wasn't like me just being like, oh yeah, this is the part where I did this thing, and then it gets kind of quiet, and I know that because I'm the composer and this lives in my head. So we wanted to talk a little bit about notation considerations. So thank you. So first off, performer investment.
Yeah. Well, so when I think about notation and kind of backing up a little bit to what Jessica said, what you're doing is you're communicating in yet another way, right? So you've got your vision inside, and unless you're the only person who's ever going to play it, then you have to figure out a way to communicate what you want or what you're thinking so that then your artists can either put their own, spin on it or whatever, but can try to realize your vision for you. And that, at first, like, the composers that Jessica pointed out that are people we've collaborated with a lot, I think that they will also say that at first, it's, okay, I'm a composer and you're the performer and we're having this very close relationship. But at some point, somebody across the globe is going to play your piece and you've never met them. So I think that's where the notation thing becomes really critical. So that's my lead into notation. Performer investment. No.
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is that we all have a lot going on. And even in this time, like strangely more in this time of COVID, but weirdly, it seems like it should be less or whatever. We're not performing concerts every weekend necessarily. Some of us are.
It's starting to happen. There's a lot of music on our music stands to learn quickly.
Indeed. So for those performers that you're working with, how much time do they really have to devote to your pieces? I'm thinking like of students. They've got to learn their pieces for their recital. They've got to learn their etude every week. They really like you as a composer. They want to play your music. how much time are they going to have to spend on your piece of paper or your screen on their music stand? And then it comes down to the fact of what are they going to spend their time doing? Are they going to, okay, I think they meant this, but I'm seeing this, but that doesn't make sense.
But over here, down here, they wrote it like this, so did they mean it like this? And I know there are a lot of performers already in the room, so you've all had that experience where you're trying to decipher what the composer may have meant.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to show you some examples of ways that you can do this better than some of the pros out there. So
we're going to throw some of those pros under the bus.
We are.
But we're not going to tell you their names.
Yeah. With love.
Yeah.
We still love them.
We'll pull them back out before the bus hits them. Promise.
All right. So as finale, Sibelius, whatever you're using when you are notating the sounds in your head, we get it. It's tricky to work with that notation software, and sometimes it will do things that undo what you've already done or whatnot. But the truth is, and harmonic spellings really get in the way, And E sharp is a really different amount of time from me looking at an E sharp and playing versus me looking at an F in most
Which was probably
instances.
the second note she learned. She learned the clarinet.
Absolutely. And all of us who are in this game of new music, we practice the Barrowman. That's our scale book. And so, let us use that skill. Don't make us develop a new skill for something that's pretty straightforward here.
We recognize patterns, and back to that, having a lot of music on our music stands, as you all do too. How do you learn it fast? You recognize patterns. So the more you can make patterns, if there are patterns in your music, recognizable, the better it is for someone to read it. Are you going to talk about the two sharps then?
Oh, should we do that here?
Let's do that here.
Okay.
So I can't see all of you, but do some of you play a transposing instrument? Unmute and say amen if you play a transposing instrument.
Amen.
Yep.
Amen. Amen. All right. How many of you who play transposing instruments have gotten a piece of music that somebody made a part out of their finale score that just looks like garbage because of the transposition? Amen? Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. So most of the time we are playing a B flat instrument, which means that what we see is sounds a whole step lower than right. So you hear a B flat, we play a C. So what that means for us is that if somebody takes something out of finale and tries to make a score really fast, and especially in new music where it's not necessarily a major or minor sometimes, most of the time, right? It's not using one of those, like a real key. Then we have this piece of garbage music that has the music is probably not garbage, but the notation is, because we have two sharps in the key signature, which makes me think, oh, I'm in D major or I'm in B minor. And then I have all these naturals and double sharps, and it's just very, very hard to read. So a lot of that does come from finale, but sometimes I will run across composers who don't understand that there are such things as transposing instruments. So anyway, that's one of the things. If you play a transposing instrument, get ready to kind of have your lecture, your elevator talk lecture in your pocket of what that means for some people who maybe have never dealt with that. But that's mostly when we see bonkers notation, it's because of something that happened when they tried to make the transposing part.
Absolutely. Great. I broke the share because somebody said they're having trouble seeing what we had up. So
Oh no.
yeah, so we got it. All right.
All right.
All right. So moving onwards, and then we will get to some real life examples.
Real life.
Okay. So taking donations for an Apple stylus. We love your key at the beginning of your piece. We love it. We love your weird quarter tone fingerings and all that kind of stuff. However, just copy and paste that in to our music for us. We will spend so much less time wishing we had an Apple stylus and printing out our music and writing it in with a pencil and then scanning the music and putting it back into it really will help us spend more time on making music in your piece. And so that's the whole point of our notation considerations. And you know, we are going to focus a little bit today on the things that get in our way now and then. And we hope that you know, enjoy our concert tomorrow night and hear that we don't, you know, we love all the music that we got for this festival. We love all the pieces that we have coming out on our CD. We enjoyed so much playing the music at the Stargazing concert. But we figured y'all have some good things going on, and we're just going to get right down to it. We think you can handle it, so we're just going to...
Before you do,
yeah.
My one other thing that I want to say about this that I totally am stealing from somebody else is that as you continue in your career, time is money. So again, if you've got, like, let's say a professional string quartet is going to read your stuff for you. You've got them for 15 minutes. You want to make sure that what you put in front of them, they can read immediately because you're paying them, right? So kind of let's go from a time is money. How do I make this the most efficient rehearsal or the most efficient recording session or whatever it is that you want to accomplish as a professional? All right, here we go.
Absolutely. All right. So, here we go. All
right, should we have a quiz? Somebody rename this pattern. Somebody unmute and tell me what else we could call it.
An E flat major scale.
Thank you. Let me just play it. Also might sound like a descending C melodic minor. Do you know how many times this tripped me up when I was sight reading it? Well, I guess you only sight read once technically, but like I would come back to it, and I'd have to write on it, you know, E flat major. Okay, so the question, in case you're having trouble seeing this on your screen, is does your music sound the way it looks? Does this look the way it sounds? No, it looks like it's some kind of really exotic collection of notes, but it's really, who said that? Who gets the prize? Was that Julian? Whoever first identified. Oh, yeah, great. Ben, yes.
Right.
No, it wasn't me. I was raising my hand for another question, but it wasn't me.
Ask a question.
Yeah, hit us.
Yeah, so that very image kind of brings up something I think about a lot, because that clearly sounds like an E flat major scale, and that'd be way easier to play. But I'm just curious about what your guys' opinions are about if like the music itself doesn't reflect the key of E flat major. I mean, and it's supposed to be evoking like another key or just another set of musical scales that's not really diatonic.
And I have an example that you're going to see where that kind of works that way. Yeah.
But great question.
That is a good question.
Thanks,
and
Ben.
so there are times when I'm going to expect to see a little bit more like something like an E sharp or something like that. I can tell you in the context of this music and this composer's music, it is almost tonal. That was seriously just a notation issue. But yeah, definitely if that's part of the pitch collection and you're going to see that pattern a lot, that's fine. But I think when we say it should look the way it sounds, if it sounds like it's a step away, it should look pretty close, right? It shouldn't look like a big leap that our fingers have to do when really it's pretty close, right? So I totally am honoring, you know, different pitch collections or why you would spell it in a different context. But this one was unnecessary. How about that? Good question.
Yeah, great question. I appreciate that.
Something in the chat.
Yeah, let's see what we got in the chat. All right.
Can I
thank you.
chime in?
Yeah, that makes sense to you. Great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
How do you personally feel about seeing conflicting accidentals in two different parts? I assume you're reading from scores or
Sometimes.
duo scores.
Yeah, go for it.
So you mean if Christy has a G sharp and I have an A flat? Is that what you're
Sure.
saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I think if it fits in the music, like if in one bar I have a G sharp and the next bar I have an A flat, that's that's not necessarily what you're asking. But if it's that it fits better in the bass clarinet part to have an A flat, and it fits better in the B flat part to have a G sharp, you know.
I have kind of a fun example, which is from older music, but Steve Reich, right? Minimalist. Okay, so he wrote New York Counterpoint, which is a really important piece for us in the clarinet world, where really the idea is that you record yourself doing, I think it's 10 tracks, and then you play live with the recording. And it is, since it's, minimalist, it's very tonal sounding. But one of the things he'll do is he'll write using all sharps, and then you'll be doing that for like 8 bars. And then the exact same lick, he'll write it using all flats. And that actually reflects a change in harmony that you hear in the track. So that doesn't bother me at all because it has a function. If I'm, especially when you're playing something really repetitive, it's easy to get lost. So having something like that tells me, oh, actually, now I know where I am, that's really great. So we're not telling you to never, ever, ever use an E sharp. Also the other thing to keep in mind with notation is that kind of, if I see a lot of flats, that tells me the tendency is we're going down. And sharps tells me the tendency is we're going to resolve up. So think about that too as far as direction. Just so that it looks like it sounds, or like you are wanting it to sound. So if there's a tendency note that really needs to be sharps, show us that. That's fine.
I mean, it's certainly, an E sharp next to an F sharp makes a lot of sense.
Oh, of course, please. Please do that, and not a trill between an F and an F sharp if it's really E sharp to F sharp, because we want to see what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
So, thank you. Good
Right.
questions.
Keep them coming.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so.
All right.
Let's keep going. All right. So a couple other examples. Again, this front one just sounds like, and I have no problem at quarter note equals 80 sight reading it. But it isn't, it's actually, to riff on what you were talking about before, it's actually more correct to call it F and C based on what's going on with the harmonies, right? So it's just an example. This, and the reason I picked this example is the only reason that those are written as E sharp and B sharp is because this composer gave me a piece that had a key signature of 2 sharps. And so I asked them to create a part for me that didn't have a key signature. And so they did that, but then they didn't go through and think about how they might want to respell some of the notes so that it didn't look so messy. So that's all that top example is. And I don't know, do we have any flutists in the room? Unmute if you're a flutist.
I am.
All right. So Sisa, what note is that at the bottom in treble clef?
God, that's horrible.
Sisa, are you a flutist, or was that someone else?
Oh, I thought it was Sisa. Who said they were a flutist? Sorry. Sisa, are you a flutist?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, you just proved my point beautifully, because I still have to count ledger lines. And flutists are the only, maybe there's some pianists and whatever, that are used to seeing ledger lines that high. But once you count up there, who's got the answer? Now I'm sure Sisa does too. The answer is B sharp. It's an isolated note. There's nothing before it. There's nothing after it. So that's an example of violinist, yes, yep. You have to read that high. So that's an example where if it was written as a high C, I would not have to count the ledger lines quite so much. But also, what's a solution notation-wise to make me be able to sight read that a heck of a lot better? Somebody unmute and tell me what you could do to make me happier.
8VA.
I love 8VA. You should have had an 8VA. Okay, yes, yeah, that's an allusion to an old commercial, sorry. But anyway, yeah, so even in the concert, like the concert we just played, I had to take a second, and I've written, this is just a C, right? But I still like had to take a moment and go, what is this note coming up? All right, so
Anytime we have to go,
yeah.
that's one split second less than we need.
And you'll be glad to know I'm not going to play that high note at you, that high B sharp at you.
All right, let me try something. Oh, we're gonna get to that later.
Mhm.
Okay.
So this is an example from music that I just recorded as part of my new music ensemble. And a couple things, it is pretty tricky to read, but I think that there's some really good things going on in this notation, even though it has a lot of sharps. So I don't hate sharps. This one E sharp down here in bar 94, that throws me. I've had to write in my music, this is just an F. But mostly, like, I get it because it's kind of F sharp majory, and that's great. Yes, that one right there. That's the bugger. So that's fine. What I really like, though, is even though 5/16 and 7/16 and 5/16 and alternating is kind of tricky, they did a really good job of beaming and showing me what I'm going to hear the drummer do. So hold that thought, because we're going to be showing you, we're going to do a bunch with click tracks in a minute. But the second half, or the lower half, that's what Jessica was talking about when she said, what did you say about the stylus? What was your joke?
Oh, what did I say? Wish list.
Wish list, yeah. Because this is actually the beginning of 3 whole pages of these kinds of multiphonics in my part, and I'm not good at remembering them. And so it's lovely that while I'm playing one of them, I can just look ahead at the fingering for another one, and I can look them. And so even though they repeat, you'll see the same. Like, for instance, bar 110 is the same as the very first one. It's so nice for me to just look right there and not have to go back and find it in a key somewhere at the beginning of the score. So kudos to him. Although I will say, since we're on notation, there is some weird finale stuff going on in here, like in bar 108. There's no need. When I see this, the first time I played this in bar 108, I thought that I was probably going to hear in the track or something that I was going to hear a change on beat 3 because it's beamed as 2 half notes instead of a whole note. So that's an example where the notation telegraphs something that is actually not there. That was just him copying and pasting, and it did something funny. So it didn't screw me up or anything, but talking about how your notation can communicate even more to the composer or to the performer is kind of an interesting little topic there.
Excellent. Yeah. Loving seeing this chat too, y'all. Thank you for dropping some different names in there. So, I know.
Let's see their faces a little bit. Okay. I want to ask some questions here. So, give me some reasons why a click track might be a good choice. What are situations where you might want to provide a click track for a performer? Or as a performer, you'd sure like a click track.
If you're playing with something fixed, whether it's on video or playing the video.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if there are events that really need to line up, right? In the video or in the audio. Absolutely. So if you're syncing with something that's fixed, very good. What else do we got? I can't read.
A texture of extreme heterophony.
Yeah, I mean, I've played some really, really tricky things where even though there wasn't a track, we still played to a click. It also allows you to do some things spatially. Like, let's imagine that you're in the rotunda of a large Capitol building and you want to play together. Having a click in your ear might work. What are some other reasons you might have a click, or you might provide one for somebody? Jessica.
Mixed meter for one is for me is a big one.
Mixed meter. Okay.
Absolutely.
And then the obvious one is if they're going to make a recording. And especially if you have an ensemble that's going to record and Sometimes it makes sense to record with everybody in the same room, but a lot of times, especially really complex new music, the way the recordings get made is that somebody's tracking by themselves and then somebody else comes in the recording studio and lays it on top of that and whatever. So that's a thing where you really, really need a very good click that's not going to confuse anybody.
Absolutely, yeah. And we're going to talk about what different ways that good click can look like, or rather what different ways not so useful clicks. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Very, very true. It's also, I mean, I'll say also it's very helpful for an ensemble like us that, again, we fly into a place where Christy comes down here, I head up to Pennsylvania, and let's say the next day or even the night of, we have a concert. Mm-hmm. And while we both rehearse and both practice on our own, our rehearsal time happens to be limited, especially if we're doing 2 or 3 different things in that time that we're together. So certainly useful item. So some considerations for you. It's very important that your click track is constant for both players and that all players have the same click. This is a really important factor, just in the same way that all players have the same score for lots of different reasons. Now, the cool thing that I have found, for our duo, I set up our electronic tracks and I handle the clicks that we receive from composers. And so I have a lot of experience sometimes creating or filling in click tracks or adjusting the ones that we receive to be more useful for our ensemble. Multiple players, we all need the same click track for all those different reasons. Oh, I did want to say before I move on, your tempo doesn't have to be consistent. You can change the tempo. You can even orchestrate within whatever program that you're using. You can drop it into something like Audacity and audio editing software. You could create a ritardando or an accelerando. Like, you can do all of that in a click, and it's with something like Audacity, it's just visual. It's not very hard to do. It takes time. Like, I don't mean that it's something that you are born knowing how to do, but it's not beyond any of your means for the work that you're already doing in something like Finale. And it just changes the game for us as performers. So I'll also say it's just imperative, and I know you all are using your Finale to create MP3 of what it's going to sound like, or listening back to that. But when you're making electroacoustic music with fixed media, you must drop that in and check and double check. And anytime you make an edit in your fixed media, you need to do it again. Anytime you make an edit in your composed notes, you need to do that again in Finale, just because 1 beat, 2 beats, 1 note, 1 measure, that all makes a difference. And of course people are going to rehearse and find those errors, but it kind of goes back to the point where how much time does a performer need to put into your piece, and will they do that? Will they really do that and get the result that you want? And then this last one is kind of the thing we've been talking about.
Just like with notation.
Yeah. And maybe I left a few things off here, so maybe I'll just stop the share for a second. Before we get to that, does your music look how it sounds? It's also really imperative that we have a couple bars click into the beginning of the piece, of course, especially if we play right at the beginning. If your piece has 8 measures of rest, you can start the click right on those 8 measures if everyone is resting. But it's just imperative that, just like you would in any normal performing opportunity, you get the beat in the tempo in your head, so it just helps. Plus, tech-wise, we need to make sure that that's working before the piece starts. Mm-hmm. So if for some reason there's a connection that's lost or a bad chord, all those things need to come into play. And so our last point in this, before we show you some examples, are, does the music look like it sounds? And thinking from a meter perspective, we're going to give you some examples. maybe you conceived of your piece in a certain meter or in a certain way, and put it into finale that way. And as you're developing it and as it's coming together, the meter has shifted, and perhaps you are no longer in that meter you thought you were in the beginning. It's just imperative that you find that out again for ease of reading and ease of performing together. And this also needs to come into your click track so that you're not using a mismatched click. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love for click track making to become a little bit more codified. We've started to do this, and some other ensembles have started to specify that, like, I always want to hear a high note for the downbeat, which makes it's easy. You're listening to a click track, and it's really, if it's in 4, it's really easy to hear bing, bong, 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 bing, bong. Great. But some people don't make their click tracks with the high note as the downbeat. So if you're in 2, bing, bong, bing, bong, I hear that as 1, 2, 1, 2. But I've actually been given a click track where it's 1, 2, 1, 2, right? So, like, thinking about what the performer needs to hear. They're not just listening at the click track, right? They're playing, and they're making sound that conflicts with the click track sometimes. So having the high be the downbeat, that's going to punch through their earbuds or their earphones a lot more, so that if they lose the boom, boom, boom sometimes along the way, if they can still always hear downbeat, that's really going to help. So I would love us all in this Zoom world to just agree that high click is always a downbeat.
I mean,
can we be in that family together?
Can we come together on
high
that
click.
one, y'all? Can we get a little party
little
symbol,
peace train,
little thumbs up?
High click for downbeat.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
Thanks for getting with us on that one. I love it. All right, here we go. So we've got a few more examples. Yeah, there we go. And
oh yeah.
Who can resist?
Yeah, actually we can resist. Cowbell is not the best sound to use when creating your click track.
And if you do use finale.
Oh yeah, if you do use finale, there's also human playback. You need to turn that off, because human playback tries to make it sound less robotic, but if you're making a click, it needs to sound robotic.
All right, give me 1 second to get set up here, and I need to do just a little something.
I'm going to play some sounds at you. So the lead into these sounds, these clicks that I'm going to share with you is I just went in the recording studio for a new music ensemble. We're doing a whole recording and a whole album that is pretty rock influenced, right? So that is code for there's probably a drummer, bass, guitar, electric guitar. That's kind of part of the instrumentation. So it's very rhythmic. And each of the composers on the recording project provided their own click, and they're all vastly different. So I was in the recording studio recording 6 different pieces with 6 very different sound environments for a click track. So we're going to share some of these with you. How are you doing?
I'm good. Can y'all see some music right now? Yeah,
Yay!
okay, right. Whoops. All right.
All right.
So let's hope this works. All right. There we go. Okay. And this is the right one. Right? Is that the right?
Yep. That should be it.
Okay. Here we go.
This is where you enter. That's good.
All right.
All right. Were you all singing that rhythm? Okay. So let's talk about a few things. The reason we talked about that you would have a click is because you got to sync with something, or you got to sync with people who are not there in the room, right? So if we're recording this and somebody else is going to come in tomorrow and record this exact same rhythm, that click is a little problematic. So talk to me. What do you think is problematic about that click in a recording studio that costs money by the hour?
Practically by the minute.
Really?
It's
Anybody
too
else?
slow.
It's way too slow. There's
Yeah,
just
you need
like
subdivision.
absolutely. Right. 45 for the quarter or for the half note anyway. So that is that is not hard to play, right? But boy, that took a really long time to get everybody to record that together. So subdivision would super help.
What about anybody else hear anything else that would be challenging about that click?
Yeah, going back to what you were saying about robotic sounds, it sounded pretty uneven, like somebody was just recording it and it wasn't totally on beat.
Love that answer. Yeah. So, well, this composer is notorious for forgetting to turn off human playback. That's part of it. But I believe that the way that he created the click was to create steady click that was low and just try to sync a high thing. So I don't know what the fidelity is for you at home, but in my in the recording studio, those downbeats sound like get on, gone, gone, get on. And so, are you on the ka or the da of that get on? And also the low click is. Can we hear it again? The low click is going to get hidden in the mix if there's a lot of sound that you're producing. So one more time, just for fun. Boom. It's super soft. So this actually happened. I was in the recording studio going, well, I can kind of hear the downbeat click, but I'm having trouble hearing beats 2 and 3. So in order for me to hear beats 2 and 3, the engineer had to turn the click track up so hard that the downbeats were like, just so I could hear beats 2 and 3. So, anyway,
All right.
it's beautiful music.
But we've got another example for you here. And let me play you.
I already told you what was wrong with it in the slide. All right.
Oh, so many things to click. I'm choosing. I want to dance to it.
Yeah. Actually, I should have shown you a different part of the music because this is a part. I'm sorry for a minute. This is a part where a lot of us are playing all of those clicks, not the long notes that you see, but you can see the rhythm. So, good for clarity when I'm practicing. Yeah, okay. But in the recording studio, kind of a disaster. So I kind of already told you why, but let's complain about this together. Way too low, right? Even if you're not old like me and losing your high-end hearing, way too low. Pitched, okay. And then I found the click to be extremely unhelpful, just because it's really, really busy. So let's offer some solutions to this composer. What would you do if this is the music and you definitely need a click? What would you do to make it, once you pitch the downbeats higher, what would you do? Anyone?
Only have the click on the big beats instead of every single 16th note.
Yes, I think so. Or for practice purposes, you could have the little subdivisions very, very, very soft. But when we're in the midst of playing all of that, definitely a higher ping and just the big subdivisions would totally rock my world. So,
Yeah. All right. And then we don't have the music for, but we have a third example.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's
right?
a nice one. So we'll show you blank slide and then
We'll click to add the title.
click it. All right. This one is great too, and you can tell us why.
6, 7,
I know what it is.
8.
All right. Hopefully everybody caught the pattern there. Wonderful. Okay, so what are some great things about this click in comparison to the other clicks that we've been talking about?
Was it too slow? This one means no, it wasn't too slow, or it was too slow. Not seeing any head shape. Yeah, okay.
A little bit. Wasn't too slow. What about the quality of the sound?
Thumbs up for clarity or thumbs down? Clarity of where the click is. Thumbs
Okay.
down.
So Zach's like, "Ooh, wrong answer." Okay, thumbs up. Okay, I got it. I'm feeling you. So those tinier clicks, and maybe it's really hard to hear over Zoom. I'm not sure what quality y'all are getting. The tiny clicks, while it might seem like that's not as helpful, it's actually very, very helpful to have a tiny, specific click. Let me tell you, we have found in the studio, even with a tiny click, could be a lot of sides of that click, you know, and so something tiny that's pointed is very helpful. Could y'all hear the voiceover that happened there as well? Were you able to hear what that? Yeah, okay. So the more that we do this, the voiceover is imperative. And I made it a super fun voiceover that I like. But I think this one is actually a little bit more effective since it's like 7, 8.
Right, yeah.
And you can hear really, really, really clearly, and there's no ambiguity there. So.
And one of the reasons that you might really find yourself doing a voiceover with rehearsal, like sometimes it's letter A, whatever. But one of the reasons for that is if the meter doesn't change very much at all, and it's gonna be easy to get lost. So if I just have a whole, 3 minutes of click track that's in 4/4, that's a metronome, right? But if it's really going to help me make sure that I enter at the right time after being, resting for 36 bars in rehearsal or in concert, that kind of thing helps me keep track. So it's more important if there's something where there's a 2/4 bar and then a 3/4 bar always before the rehearsal letter, then I don't need that because my ear will hear that. But if it's super repetitive, that's when the voiceover can be really helpful. Another click track that I'll tell you about that was very, very helpful and that used voiceover was a piece by a guy named Florent Guise, and he used metronome. So there were 8 people in the ensemble, and there are 4 pairs, and he was doing a phase metronome piece. So there's a video of these metronomes that were phasing, and then we were to play with those phasing metronomes. So my partner was like across the room, and then the person sitting next to me was phasing, and so like that was almost hard to walk straight afterwards. So the click in my ear telling like just ignore everybody you're hearing, listen to your own click, play on your click, and then letter A, letter B, those kinds of things really made that performance possible.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So this is kind of wrapping our stuff about click and also about notation. I hope this is helpful. Do you have any feedback for us? Like, was that a little too long, or did that all sort of make sense? Or do you have any questions or other comments that you'd like to share with the group? Oh yeah, Ben?
I just wanted to ask if this slide is going to be available like online or something, or if it could be shared.
Sure.
Yeah, we can sort that out. I'll have to, save that presentation and stuff.
Would you like us to embed those click track examples, or is that just what's on the slide good enough?
I think the slides is probably fine, but if there is a way to embed that also,
Sure.
Yeah, we'll work with that. We can do that. Elizabeth, is there a place that they can go, like a Dropbox or something that you're
To rewatch these?
Oh, yeah, yeah, or just to give them the PowerPoint.
To access the slide.
Yeah, if you can give me a link, I can include it in our
Great.
guide doc.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
We'll make that happen. Yeah, thanks, Ben. That makes me feel like we've been useful. So it's always nice to be a useful engine. All right, so nice. Well, let's move on. We wanted to talk a little bit about creating electronic tracks on a really kind of overarching kind of basic level, and we'd be happy to hear from anybody who's done that and talking about that more. Be great. So I'm here, and I'm gonna go here, and that's how I'm gonna do.
This doesn't get easier. The pandemic needs to end for a slew of reasons, not the least of which is Zoom.
Ah, all right. But we're happy to be here. All right.
Okay.
So fixed media considerations, and I think everybody here probably has a different layer of intersection with this sort of creation. So forgive me if we're in different spots on this. You want to have some kind of fade in or out, even if on a pretty big Audacity plane it's this big. You're gonna have a little fade in, just so it doesn't pop, and a little fade out. You're gonna love the fade out, but it's really nice. Just the envelope of the sound needs to have those shapes on either side. So I'll say that we just recorded an album in May, and we finished recording the album in May. And we recorded the album over about 3 years, and kind of like 2 years, but minus the pandemic year, on the pieces that really went on the album. But we've been doing recordings kind of for our conference presentations and whatnot since 2016, really specifically with electroacoustic music. And the fixed media track kind of becomes this third person in the space when you perform, but especially in the studio. And so I think it's really just as you would, it's maybe seems kind of obvious to say, but just as you would when you were orchestrating something. If you really want that voice to sing out over the top, you're going to bring down either the dynamics or maybe just how many instruments are playing along with that instrument. And so I think when you are looking at the track, depending on, again, your sophistication with with digital editing software, audio software, you can, I think, just on a basic level, make silence in the track for the live sounds. So you can make less things happen and let the live sounds come through. Or, if you really want that kind of aspect of competition, or maybe you really want to ramp up by doing a fade in, or like you want to really crescendo in the track to make the performers really play out or try to play through, or if you're kind of like you have that idea the composers or the performer should really work to get through that track, I think it's just an important thing to think about. A lot of times when we were recording and making different things in the studio through automation and whatnot, we really had to make room in tracks for us to come through. And that's something that we can do. Again, the time in the studio is absolutely money. There's no question about that. And then the final idea here, if you're wanting some clarinet sounds, you'll hear in both the last two tracks, the last two movements of our concert tomorrow night, you'll hear pieces that I wrote that have a lot of clarinet sounds in it, a lot of bass clarinet sounds. And so because I'm a bass clarinetist and a clarinetist, it's not that hard for me to go in the studio or find a way to make those sounds come through. But if you're wanting to include sounds from the instrument to maybe have an echo effect or a build-up effect, I think it's just important that you consider the time and the equipment available to your performer. So are you going to pay a studio for them to go on for an hour and do the things that you want them to do? Are you going to ask them to do too much for kind of the buy-in? You could consider making all of the electronic parts that you want recorded from the performer to come straight out of the part that they're going to play. Maybe not the entire part, but it could come out of the part, so at least they're learning the tricky licks that they're going to have to perform live, and maybe laying those down in the studio. And certainly there's a lot of different things that we can talk about. We don't have, we can pull up lots of different examples as far as fixed media from our website to talk about that more. But I think this might be, we've got plenty of time, and we can show you some examples and talk some more about this sort of thing. But Chris, do you have some thoughts about the track?
I actually just remembered that there was a thing I wanted to talk about before.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Well, we promised that we would talk back about that if your meter as you compose had changed.
Oh, yeah.
Change the track.
Yes, absolutely.
So I need to revisit that so that we don't need that.
Okay, all right. Absolutely.
I can do that
Let's
when quotes and stuff.
come back here to that. And just, let's come back to the folks and see if they have any questions about this, and then we can circle back. So, what are y'all thinking? Is that making sense?
Yeah, it's funny just thinking about like the like if you're in a production like mindset, if you're like in the mindset of a producer, it's hard, like all the aspects you're talking about like adding silence or maybe making the track quieter for the live parts. That's something that like you don't really think about because you have automation. So that's super important. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that you really have to, the producer ears are really important, even for live performance, but it's fresh for us since we've come from the studio. And I was really, really fortunate to have Pamela Z come to UNC Charlotte 2 years ago, and my clarinet choir got to play a piece with her and watch her perform and kind of hang out with her a little bit as we were going to some different venues around Charlotte. And it was so cool. She, before I kind of got to work with her and fangirl around her, I used to think about the electronics that we use in our setup as like this barrier. Okay, we got to push through these electronics, and we love it because we can go play in an art museum. We can play in the middle of nowhere, and we have more sounds than just, two clarinetists. Okay, so that's what we were trying to get away from. And there's nothing wrong with two clarinetists, but we were just moving in a different direction. And anyway, so I used to kind of think of it almost from that like very classical-minded, kind of conservatory model school. Like, okay, we got to play these electronics and we got to push through. And after hanging out with Pamela Z, it's her voice and the electronics, and it's really one for her. It's really one. It's just a part of her ensemble and a part of her, and it's nothing that she has to fight with. And that kind of changed things for me, and then also with this time in the studio, to really kind of understand we can set these tracks up so we're not trying to push through them, but y'all can help us a lot if you're interested in writing for that group of sounds. It can really, really make or break. So.
One of the ways that we found, especially when we went to record stuff that we performed a lot, was that if you're creating an electronic track and you would actually want to put things on different tracks, like, can you talk a little bit about figuring that out?
Yeah, absolutely. So I learned more about this. I'm, again, somewhat new to composing, but really, really enjoying it. So the different layers of a track are called stems in the world of recording, and so I learned a lot, like if you can pull out those different stems, or if you have a stem that is like the lower voices and you have a stem that is the higher voices, you can kind of play around with it too, depending on how many different different voices you have that might echo or follow each other around the room. You can pan those left and right and really make it feel like in a stereo system, like somebody is really, talking out of the speaker and someone's coming out of the speaker. So as you're creating these electronic tracks, if you are using multiple layers like most of us do, or like many of you do, hang on to those layers, as laborsome as it can be and as much disk space as it does take up. It's going to be really useful for you to have those original sounds later on if you do have someone that's going to record your piece. Or I love our team for making a record, which is Christy and I, like clarinet ears. And then Rusty Banks, a wonderful composer producer who is a guitarist and has really lived in all the worlds of music, meaning pop music, jazz, severe classical music, and the lovely Spanish guitar classical music that we hear as well. And then our audio engineer is someone who has played in rock bands his whole career.
Really comes to it from a rock perspective, and that's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Because the way that he could engineer us was really great, but he also doesn't understand why composers don't get it.
Yeah,
so, we should have him here.
Yeah, it was really fascinating. Plus, he does a lot of voiceover work, and his knowledge of what's going to work and what isn't when you get it finally mixed down into those two stereos is really fantastic. But for us, it's really taught us a lot about, it's taught both of us a lot, and a lot for me about, this sounds great when it's playing on my computer through 5 different channels, but how's it going to sound when it gets bounced down to 2? And then what if there is capacity in some spaces to have bigger channels, 4 channels or whatever, like do I want to have those available to me? So it's just sort of like saving and documenting your work as you go, which I definitely find to be one of the most challenging things, of just keeping track of it all. But that's gonna be a big helpful thing for you. And so I think we covered in a nice way on these, talking about the fixed media track, kind of like all ends. If you're just starting out, fade in, fade out, give us what you got. It's going to be great, If you are getting into places where you're layering a lot of different sounds and using a lot of things, save those stems. Make friends with an audio engineer that can help you, teach you a few things. Maybe you can, become a little bit of an apprentice. And that's sort of what's happened to me, and it's been awesome and really useful. So we do need to circle back to another item.
I mean, it's not that important.
We've got time. And any other questions before we head over there? Yeah, Chase.
Just a quick question on fixed media, because I'm working on actually my first piece with mixed media. So funny you're talking about it. It's a little bit scary because it's fixed. And as a performer, we're always trained that everything is very flexible. That's part of the art, is that it's flexible on stage, and there's less worry when the musicians are having fun. If something happens, they can be flexible about it. Fixed media seems a little bit scary because it's not that way. So would you consider more practice needed with fixed media, since they are a musician, in that there's a trio part, maybe if you're in a duo with an electronic piece, but they're not they don't listen. It's like an instrumentalist who doesn't listen. They're just doing their own thing. So it does take more practice.
I think it just takes artistry. If you just decide that, okay, all I'm going to do is just sync with the click and it doesn't matter what else is going around me, then you're not really engaged in the music. So I think that is a trap that you can definitely fall into. But I think also, in a way, just like you practice with a metronome, but it doesn't mean that you can't also do rubato within that, right? So there are some things where I think you can become more artistic because you have that limitation. My husband will say, like, that's where the greatest artistry or the greatest creativity happens, is within limitations. So I think it just depends, I think it's a different way of practicing. It's a different way of, like, what can I get away with? You guys are all so young, but when I first started playing electroacoustic music, none of it was with a click. It was all like very heavily notated. Like when you hear this gong, then you can, and when you hear these little tiny mouse sounds, then you do this, and it was a lot of practice just to learn the track, and to try to sync up. And so that's actually been more freeing because I don't have to think, okay, do I need to rush this phrase because pretty soon that gong's coming, because I know now with the click when that gong is coming and how I can fit what I want into it. So I think it can be limiting, but I think it can be freeing. How's that for a non-answer?
That's the best kind of artistic answer I could ask for. Thank you.
You kind of just proved too why I love to have my clarinet students play with fixed media, because when they play with the pianist, pianists will find them, oh, okay, you dropped a beat, cool, it's okay, you can, you find each other. But I kind of love that kind of ride or die, like you gotta go, like it's not gonna wait for you. And so it's kind of, it's like has to be pretty intense. You got to get up to that number, unless you're really good at Audacity and you can, slow it down without changing the pitch. But that's a lot of work too. Anyway, so yeah, I love that, and really treating it like another collaborator.
Yeah. What else? My last thing is just an anecdote. It doesn't really.
Okay, all right. We've got about 15 minutes, so we can move to your anecdote.
Yes. Oh, my anecdote is, okay. So, Jessica was saying, as you compose your piece, you might find that it's fallen into a different meter. So that the click track should really be in the meter. So one of the pieces that we just recorded, the click is in 5. Easy peasy, right? Neat. But the actual music is 3 + 3 + 2, like Mission Impossible, right? Right? So it's really hard to do a whole section of a piece where the drummer is going where your click argues with that a little bit. So that was just another example of like I had to think it a different way in the recording studio than I had to think it in live performance, where it's so easy to just do the groove. And then the click actually made the piece a lot harder because the click wasn't really what the music is. So that's my anecdote.
It's like kind of the opposite of like getting so caught up in the notation that you don't feel the shift in the audio sounds, in the actual realized sounds. And then you look at that and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go back and re-beam all of this.
Yes, yeah.
So, right. But it kind of, again, it goes back to the point of, who are your performers? How much time did they have? Do you want just the people that you know to play your music, or do you hope that across the world, across the country someday, other folks can play your music also? So, yeah.
So I'm curious about your questions. I'm curious about your hopes and dreams. I'm curious about your fears. Like, what would be keeping you from writing? Oh, like for our duo, some of you did. 2 of you did write for our duo. But like, what are the things that you're like, ooh, not so sure that we could help you feel better about? Chase.
I'm going to talk too much, I swear.
Oh.
My fear is that most acoustic performers are acoustic performers. So if I write something with a fixed media track, that's going to be a learning curve that they may not want to travel down. So that's always my limitation when thinking about electronics. Maybe that's different with ensembles or duos that have been around for a while. It's kind of part of new music now. You can't escape electroacoustic,
Sure. Yeah, but I get it. And I get it, like, we have colleagues who teach clarinet who are like, okay, my students want to do this kind of music, but I don't know what do I need to buy so that I can help them, you know. So there is, your artists do have to want to engage down this road, because it does maybe involve them, you know, carrying more equipment or buying some equipment or something like that. So things that you can do, anything you can do to make that gentle for them is gonna really help, right? So if we get a piece of music and we have to do a lot of sleuthing and investigative work to figure out how we would play it, we're less likely to play it than if a lot of solutions are offered to us already. Even suggestions or something like that. I can't come up with a real specific example of that right now, but
I got a couple for you. I mean, I think for me, for me, the really compelling thing about electroacoustic music are the sounds that you can incorporate that you can't incorporate with or that you normally don't incorporate when you just have instrumentalists. If you, maybe, I don't know if you're a fan of Jacob TV, if you've checked out his work, he was kind of one of the first people, I think, to incorporate a lot of transcription of the voice and different awesome, great. Yeah. So, I missed that.
Oh, it's okay. We'll get to it later.
So, I think that's a really compelling reason to write electroacoustic music, because of the sounds that you can bring in. And then the other thing is, as Chrissy was saying, the easier you can make it. So yeah, we are invested in this music, right? We figured out a while ago we wanted to do this. We had started our group, and we were doing we had 2 or 3 pieces that we figured could work, and we would each do a solo piece, and then, you know, it would kind of come out to a 45-minute show of the 2 of us in different configurations, and it was great. But one thing you could do is just not use a click. Make your piece rhythmic enough that people can hear it. So there's a great piece for clarinet called alt.music.ballistics by Nikolai Razanovich, who taught at Akron, Ohio. And that piece has no click. Now, it would be a lot easier if there was a click.
I think that's because it was written in a time when people didn't really do that.
Yeah.
But it's
doable. And now, I mean, you know, I guess no one has a phone jack, no one has an 1/8" jack in their phone anymore. But I mean, really, all you need is a phone and a Bluetooth speaker, and you can practice that. And most people have that, or you can practice with your earbuds. Wired earbuds are better than Bluetooth, because Bluetooth can have a delay, or, you know, some kind of foof or whatnot. So I think, you know, make it as straightforward as possible. Don't make people have to use a click, but then also make sure your sounds are really clear. So it's like, okay, you're going to hear
while you play really loudly.
That's how you know when you start.
And you know, I've had several times, more than I care to admit, times where my earbuds kind of pooped out during the concert, and so I still had to just play without being able to hear a click. So the click is not necessary, but it's not a crutch for you to write something that doesn't make sense to you. It's a tool to help some magic occur that might be harder to do if composer or performers are just listening for an event and trying to sing, right? You can make some amazing magic happen with the use of a click. So I wanted to talk about this question here, but I can't read it very well. So the question: do you have pieces where you're required to play more mechanically and others where you're required to be more emotive? Yes, actually. You want to talk about Beautiful Day versus Water, Water, Water?
Sure, go ahead, actually.
Okay. Yeah, so we have a piece that we use a click for the outer fast movements, and we didn't bother to make a click for the middle movement. It's pretty rhythmic, and also it's beautiful, and it's in a meter. How about that? If we push and pull the tempo, it doesn't ruin the effect, right? There's no magic that was supposed to happen, and we slowed down a little bit, and now that magic is gone. So we totally enjoy playing that one without. So it totally fits the sound environment of that movement.
It's awesome. She used like a sweep, like a broom sweep, and it's a waltz essentially. It's in three, yeah. And so like, it's beautiful. If we put a click there, we'd have to make this choice about what. That's
which part of that is the downbeat.
Yeah, and so she did a really beautiful job of allowing us this incredible amount of expressiveness in something that's fixed. So that was a great question, Phil, and it kind of really plays into Chase's question as well, as far as like flexibility, and then we have some pieces that if we skip a beat, it's just we do have to. We hopefully always play musically, but the mechanics and the lining up with the track is essential.
Yeah, just depends on the piece. Yeah, and if you're trying to just create kind of a sound environment that is like oceanic or something like that, where it can be more ethereal, then yes, of course there can be a lot more decisions left up to the performers about that, and that can be a super effective piece.
And if you want to do something like that, just make sure it's longer than the music that you wrote by enough time, and the freedom is there.
Okay, good question. Does your preference for a certain type of click track change after practicing or rehearsing? That's a good question. Wow, yes, I think it does. I think that if I'm learning something like that piece that I showed you that goes like, I have to use the crutch of a click or a metronome, or sometimes a slowed down click, and some composers will do that, which is kind of awesome. Then I don't have to slow it down myself. And then the more I know the piece, the less I need the click, and it just gets in my way. So yeah, I do think there's an evolution there sometimes.
You could do a practice click at a practice tempo, and then maybe also that practice tempo is slower, and so it would have your keep, and then your big girl click could be faster and not have all those subdivisions. So great. Well, y'all have been such a great audience, and so fun to talk to you. Thank you for being so interested in what we have to say, and we love this. I mean, this is what we want to do. We want to work with composers.
And speaking of composers, let's just do another shout out to Cisa and Abby. Wrote us amazing works.
Yay!
Amazing works that you're going to hear tomorrow night. Yay, Cisa. Yay, Abby.
Yeah, we're loving it. We're loving it. Yeah. And we should probably give a giant shout out to Elizabeth.
Who? Elizabeth! Oh, look at her. Yeah, thanks. Great.
We love it. Well, we hope y'all...
Oh, go ahead.
Come and do talk back after our concert tomorrow night. I'd love to talk to you more about that.
We had one more question from Josh, actually.
Oh, go ahead.
He said, "How do you see?" Josh, do you want to ask that?
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. If you read it, it's fine.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
You can say
just
it
how do you navigate all of the barriers as far as equipment goes, like microphones and headphones and headphone amps and computers and software and all that stuff?
It's a great question, Josh. It is tricky. I remember scraping together my money for my first my first interface and microphone and cables, and I was like, So some of it is you don't have to have all of it, all of it. You need an interface. If you're writing for clarinets, we are loud. You know, if you're gonna write fixed media, unless we're playing in the middle of the field on last Saturday night, we probably don't need to be mic'd. You know, that's kind of the cool thing. Or you can hopefully write things in a way, you know, you can think about that from your end, from your craft, to write in a way that the instrumentalist doesn't have to be super amplified to get over it. That takes away one item. If you can write in a way that it's obvious enough, you don't have to do the click track. That's another layer of whatnot. But I'd say also make friends with the tech guys at your universities if you're in that environment. They will be your best friend if you learn how to wrap cables and help them after concerts. They, you know, you never, I mean, honestly, and you know, you could also try that at your local theater. There's a whole, I didn't know this, I kind of want to like do this now, but there's a whole degree that you can get in theater sound design. So, you know, make friends at your local community theater, you know, community theater. Wrap some cables, wrap some cords, see if you can do some sound design for them. I mean, I don't know, I think you have to make friends, you have to buy in a little bit, but you don't need headphone amps and all of that, I think, at the beginning anyways. Get into it, see if this is what you want to do, see if you find a couple performers that are loving your music and playing it, and then you can slowly start to build your ensemble of electronics over time.
One last little thing that I will say, since I've been on the planet a while, is that be thinking that everything that we've talked about today as far as specific equipment or specific programs or specific anything is going to be obsolete in a few years. So we have pieces, and I have a lot of composers who've written great works that you can't play anymore because you needed to have, you know,
Super
Collider, or even Max pieces. You know, then your performer has to have a lot more stuff. So be thinking, are there ways to maximize your potential in a piece? If you have a piece that you want to have as a Max piece, can you make a version that can be fixed media so that more people can access it and perform it? If you think along those lines of what if Max doesn't exist in 10 years, what is this piece just dead, or is there a way for it to continue to have a life? That might free you up thinking about technology a little bit.
Because I reckon that people are still going to, like, listen to music, you know? Like,
I suppose, yeah.
So, you know, an MP3 or whatever that is called in 10 years, the preferred file format, like, we're going to be listening to music, hopefully. Mm-hmm. And so, perhaps that's helpful.
Yeah. Great questions, everybody.
Yeah.
All right, I think it's time.
We did it.
5:59.
Kira was finished. She was ready for it.
You got it.
Good job.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much for being
tomorrow
here.
night.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Bye, ladies. Thank you so much. Thanks for everybody and your awesome questions.
Yeah. Thank you.